All right, welcome to Web3 Talks, the what's, how's, and why's of NFTs. My name is Peter Mauric. I'm head of public affairs at Parity Technologies, filling in for my colleague Phil, who is welcoming his second kid into the world. Congratulations, Phil, to you and yours. Today, we are joined by Witek from Enjin, Shabane from EverdreamSoft, and Elliot from AndArt agency to discuss all things NFTs on Polkadot and beyond. So first of all, gentlemen, welcome. And I'll ask that you give a little bit of an introduction of yourselves. We'll go clockwise around the screen, starting with Witek.
Hey, so my name is Witek. I am the co-founder and CTO of Enjin. We've been in the blockchain space for 4 years, and we've been a company working in the gaming space for about 12 years now. And so we basically created the first NFT platform for game developers and companies and people to start minting NFTs. I'm also the author of the ERC 1155 standard, which is a popular NFT standard now.
Great. Shabane, over to you.
Hi, Shaame from EverdreamSoft, based in Switzerland. We are in the NFT space as Dinosaur. We started in 2015 with Spells of Genesis, trading card game on chain using the counterparty technology that was even before Ethereum mainnet was released. And since then, we're building tools for a multi-chain approach of NFTs and building on Polkadot because it offers a lot of flexibility in terms of building new NFT solutions.
Thank you very much. Elliot, you're up.
Hi, my name is Elliot. I am a partner at AndArt agency. We are not a tech or a blockchain company. We are an art company. But my involvement in the blockchain NFTs, well, blockchain space personally, but NFT space spans probably to 2018 when I worked at Christie's. We hosted a big forum there called the Christie's Art and Tech Summit, which talked about different technologies and what their potential impact on the art world could be. The topics we covered in 2018 was blockchain, and NFTs were one of the use cases. And so have been very involved on both kind of the crypto art side and the traditional art side since then. And I'll tell you guys a bit more about that after.
Great, thank you. So first off, I think we'll start with Shabane. You mentioned that you're sort of like a dinosaur in the NFT space. Rather than like us going through and talking about how we got, you know, the classic, like how I got into crypto story is like maybe a little bit tired out. So let's start off with something like a little bit different. Just talking about the NFT space from when you started out to now, like how does it compare from those like sort of early days? And then like, how are you feeling about the NFT space? What does it look like compared to that today? Shabane, starting with you.
So back when we started, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency was not known at all for many people. So most of people didn't know what is cryptocurrency, blockchain, whatsoever. And when we came and we say, okay, we're gonna put game item on blockchain, that was even more crazy. And one of the article we got from VentureBeat was saying Bitcoin is not only used to sell drugs, but you can also buy game collectibles. And that's really show how was the atmosphere at that time around cryptocurrencies. And we saw the possibility of writing metadata other than purely financial for a game. And our previous game, Munga, we saw player trading cards for real money under the table. And then they will contact support and say, hey, I was hacked, you revert, etc. So we thought, what if we could give ownership of cards to players the same way as a physical card? And that's how we came to that idea. And actually, people who were in Bitcoin really liked the idea. but I would say regular people, regular player were not that convinced. So it really created two segments of users.
Off mute. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's really interesting. I think maybe we can get back into that a little farther in the conversation, because I think slowly but surely, like, those two segments might come back together now that everyone sort of gets it. I think we'll go to Elliot next before Witek. We'll get into like the deep technical details of like what things were before you wrote those standards. Elliot, sort of from more the art world perspective, talk about, 3.5 years ago when NFTs were really first catching on, at least in like the, deep tech world. How was the art world thinking about it then versus now?
The answer is we weren't, or not to such a big extent. The conference that I hosted at Christie's was probably one of the first major global kind of unveiling of this technology to the art world. It was blockchain in general. It wasn't specifically focused on NFTs. We talked about different use cases that blockchain could have on the NFT world, and so we talked about recording kind of provenance and condition, which is hugely important to physical artworks. Recording that on the blockchain, how that could be beneficial. We talked about fractionalization or tokenization of physical works with a blockchain, even though that had been done previously without the technology. And then we talked about digital art, because I think even back then the term NFT wasn't even so mainstream, at least not in the art community. It was an interesting conference because it brought together a lot of traditional art world players. So we had a lot of museum people speaking, big galleries, big artists, but at the same time we had a lot of the more early stage tech startups. Super Rare spoke. Super Rare had been founded 3 months previously. We brought them on as speakers. We actually even gave away 300 NFTs to all the participants who attended the conference. They were NFTs minted by an artist called Robbie Barrett, who was the first artist ever to mint on Super Rare. And we gave them away for free. And believe it or not, of the 300 NFTs we gave away, I think only 12 were claimed. Most people threw them away because there were physical cards that had, you could access the wallet through the physical cards. And now those lost Robbies, as we call them, are worth $300,000. So there's been definitely a dramatic shift.
What's the cost basis on free? I think it's free.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, bringing it back to today, the Sotheby's had a curated sale that curated NFT sale that just ended about an hour ago, where I don't know if anybody saw the news, but the CryptoPunk now just sold for $11 million or $12 million almost. Which I think makes it the highest selling CryptoPunk for a single CryptoPunk ever.
Wow. Pretty impressive good. With the markets down still on top of that. Witek, so sort of underpinning what Shabane and Elliot have been able to accomplish or see happen in the NFT space, talk about sort of the tech, right, where it was at the start versus your sort of, I guess, journey through the standard and where we find ourselves today, sort of looking towards scalable production infrastructure on a platform like Polkadot.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, back in the early days, before even Ethereum, and people were experimenting with Bitcoin, like Shabane said, and there was like the concepts of colored coins and all this stuff, and people were trying to make different kinds of activity happen on the blockchain. But when Enjin really got started in the space, in the blockchain space, we were trying to bring these kind of ownable items into games, because a lot of our users were running Minecraft servers. They were taking in donations for the communities and giving people perks in the game or items in the game. And there was, a lot of the problems people have mentioned on the talk already now. People were losing items, servers were getting reset, people were getting banned, losing their things. There was a lot of frustration. And we started seeing that you could go a lot further than just owning something or trading something. You could actually make it an interesting part of your gameplay. So when we got started in this, really the only standard on Ethereum was ERC20 for tokens. And we were like, how could we make this work? Should we extend it? And there was nothing like it wasn't an easy standard to work with. The thing is with ERC20, they're made for currencies, right? For you have a token symbol, you have an amount that you own, and an address that owns it, and then you have permissions. Every smart contract, like ENJ, for example, or BAT or any other ERC20 token, has its own permissions. Who can interact with it? What smart contracts can do it? And they're all sort of walled off. So if you want to put a bunch of tokens into a game, it's nearly impossible with that standard. So I started writing the very first sort of Ethereum, one of the first Ethereum kind of contracts, I think, in the world in early 2017. And, it turned into the ERC 1155 standard. Meanwhile, ERC 721 actually came out with CryptoKitties and those guys. And they... we saw that they were doing pure NFTs, one item. But we wanted a more extensive standard that supported, stacks of things or NFTs, and the ability to send batches of them at once. Which now I think a lot of people are really appreciating. ERC 1155 is seeing a lot of growth in the Ethereum community because you can do these batch operations. You can mint fungibles, non-fungibles, and so that's been going really well. And we've seen this massive explosion over the last six or 8 months now of NFTs, and a lot of people are starting to now press into the utility. Beyond just collecting something. They want to use it. They want to interact with it. They want to craft it. They want to, do all kinds of things. And we started hitting some sort of blockers with Ethereum, where games that want to integrate this stuff, they needed more power. They didn't want to deal with the massive transaction fees on the Ethereum network. They want to do a lot of stuff on chain. So we started last year looking at Polkadot and a lot of other blockchains, and we realized that it was a perfect platform to start developing a kind of a cross-chain next-gen NFT standard on. So what we're doing now is we're building something called the Paratoken standard. We've done a lot of progress on it. We're hoping to post it to the community soon, and we're hoping that will create a way for people to bring NFTs from Ethereum into Polkadot, into other chains, into Kusama, and give people a lot more power there.
Yeah, people will see I have my New York Botanical Garden Kusama exhibit shirt that I got yesterday afternoon. Very great exhibit. If you're in town, I highly recommend you check it out. I think there's also one in Berlin right now. That's great. I think before we go into sort of like what's sort of more broadly speaking, the future of NFTs, sort of getting past that journey from the beginning to now. I wanted to talk about some of the like challenges that have emerged. First, I think starting in the art world with Elliot, like I've always had this question, right? Is like, if I buy a piece of art in a gallery that's on the wall, I would like an NFT to go along with it to represent digital ownership of that. But like, what are the challenges associated with the physical and digital divide, right? You need to figure out a way to like cross that bridge.
Yeah. I would almost take it a step back. I think so. There's NFTs that have physical manifestations and NFTs that don't. One of the big questions when the art world is adopting this or was looking at this technology is, what is an art world, a traditional art world NFT going to look like? Is it just going to be digital representation of a physical painting that already exists, or should we be creating something completely new? People have tried going in both directions. I don't think one has been more prominent or more successful than the other. But what I think is interesting is that you're starting to see kind of two separate art NFT worlds start to expand. You have the kind of crypto world, which is much more tech-based, which are the people who are using platforms like the Nifty Gateways or Super Rares or whatever that is. And then you have the traditional art world that used to buy in galleries and the traditional collectors. And so you've seen a little bit of crossover between the two. So you've seen traditional collectors buying NFTs in those platforms, and you've seen NFT artists that are traditional to these platforms sell at Sotheby's or sell at traditional galleries. But I think actually what's going to happen now is that the two worlds are going to start splitting and exist in their own separate ecosystems. And so what I think that's going to mean is that I think that the world of the super rares and the nifties and that the pure kind of crypto crowd, let's say, I think those works are going to remain digital, purely digital. And I think occasionally maybe there'll be a physical counterpart. And the art world is kind of going to do their own thing. I think the art world is more open to using NFTs to back physical objects because they still view the value in the physical. You talk to most major museums and a lot of them are doing terribly with their digital transformations, and during the pandemic got hurt a lot because their whole shtick is actually seeing a painting on a screen is not the same thing as seeing a painting in real life. You need to see the canvas and you can't see that on a screen. So to answer your question, I think that what's going to happen is the traditional art world is going to rely a little bit more on using NFTs to back a physical presence, and the crypto world is going to be more purely digital. Obviously, that's not a rule, but I think that as those worlds grow, that's what we're going to see. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. It might be a total curveball, Shabane, but in the gaming space, is there any physical manifestation of gaming NFTs at all? Could you imagine that, like where people like maybe could have actual physical trading cards representing their armor in? Because I still remember, like, I like meeting with my friends in the morning before school and trading physical cards. Like, is that a possibility, or do you think it's purely digital for gaming?
I think there is an important question when you think about NFT. What asset does it represent? So there we have the token, which is an information on chain, very simple. And then at some point you say this token represents something, a dragon in a game, a card that you own. And same for art. It is the token representing the asset, and the asset can be physical, like a painting or a game card. It can be physical, and the token is just a certificate of ownership. So you could have the art in your pocket or on your wall, and you can have the ownership that belongs to someone else. And the two can be completely separate, or they can be regrouped. So far, I didn't see any project that really take that into account. But if you could store the private key within the object, and when you transfer the object, you transfer also the token inside. This is a challenge that still needs to be addressed. But so far, I would say really think of the token as just a piece of paper and the art object that represents, and then at some point you make a link. You say, okay, this piece of paper represents this particular asset. The same way, if you sell your house, you actually sell the paper, the notary, and not the whole house that you're gonna bring to someone else. So I really see the token as a certificate, basically.
I'm seeing people actually experimenting with a few different options here as well. For example, we're speaking with some sport leagues who actually want to do, like, when you receive a ticket, you go to the game or whatever, and the ticket has a QR code on it. And if you've attended that game, then you can take that ticket back, load it into your wallet, and maybe there's some video games associated with that you get, or you get to keep the ticket stub in a digital form. So then you can collect those and do things with them in the future. Another way, there's I think there's some game developers experimenting with having those digital tokens, having a digital character, and then turning it into a physical piece of merchandise, either 3D printing it or actually receiving some sort of merchandise, some weapon from the game or whatever it is, in like a physical form. So that's kind of cool as well.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one to think about, and I think the design space for new interesting products that people are really going to go wild over is very vast. So let's just riffing on that, like, let's talk about what the future looks like, right? Again, so we got sort of like through the past, we understand, generally speaking, where the present is. Like, what's the future of digital ownership look like, sort of, again, across your specialties? Witek, let's start with you again here. Like, what's the trippiest, coolest future case of digital ownership via NFTs that you can imagine?
Ideas? Well, there's a lot of ideas, and I actually used to talk about them a lot when we first started, and now slowly, we're very close to the technology being ready, where it's ubiquitous enough, and people can actually all have wallets and start interacting with these things.
And you got to sell the boring stuff to get it out there first.
Yeah. So I mean, you can think of lots of interesting scenarios. I mean, I think in the next few years, people are going to start experimenting with on-demand minting, where people can actually mint their own items, mint their own tokens, and then integrate them into a game, into some sort of multiverse. With Enjin, we first kind of like made this thing called the multiverse, where we created a bunch of items and we just distributed them to like 10 or 15 game developers and said, hey guys, collaborate, try to use these in your games. So it was like a first attempt at sort of jump starting something like that. Then I could see a lot of interesting things with like real world AR, where how huge Pokemon Go was. Imagine those were tokens. You could run around the world and pick up crypto tokens, or you could fight literal AR battles inside the real world. If you win, you can go and snatch up all the tokens laying on the ground. There's you can actually collaborate with people, put your tokens together, and then have like something really at stake. Let's say you all build a battle bot together, and then you have a bunch of friends that build a battle bot with their tokens. The other guys build a battle bot. If you defeat the other battle bot, you get to sweep up all the tokens. So it adds a lot of stress and excitement to gameplay, and just there's so much we can talk about. But yeah, I see that kind of stuff becoming a core part of gameplay, a core part of people's interaction with the world. I even want to do things like just on-demand mint some NFTs and just use them in daily life. I mean, let's say I could even just tell my Alexa to mint some sort of chores token, and my kid will like get the tokens and he can redeem them for something like gameplay time, or I don't know, whatever, right? There's a lot of interesting stuff you can do.
Awesome. Shabane, how about you? What's the wildest future case you see for NFTs, and I guess specifically in gaming as your area of expertise, but even beyond?
So following the path of what Witek says, since we started, we really believe that, and I believe that NFT, blockchain in general, will change the world in very different manner. But if we take the creativity and NFT itself, you isolate that, it allows people, anybody, to create thing and put it on the market and certify their authenticity, provenance, etc. And this changed a lot of things when it comes to creation. Before, we had company that create a product and sell to customer. Now, customer can create a product as well as a form of NFT. So when you take a game, for example, you could imagine that developer just buy items designed by players, user-generated content, buy those tokens and implement them in their own game. And you could have contribution from many people creating a one product. So basically, just like YouTube, if you look at before the world before YouTube, the television could broadcast a message or something. So you would need to be on television. Right now with YouTube and internet, everybody can create content and be broadcast all over the world. So we came from a major big company broadcasting to user or regular people broadcast. And when you look at this in terms of blockchain, you really see that blockchain brings that to creation of value, craftsmanship. So you would have more and more products that are brought not only by a single company, a single game company, but mixing talent and value from a lot of people, and everybody gets paid. Every little creation gets rewarded because it's on the market and can be auditable. So I really think that's the big game changer. Trying to put NFT in games, I do it, so I cannot blame for that. But I really think it's not about a game company putting NFT in a game, for example, but it's really going beyond that, allowing people to contribute. We see a lot of mods and user-generated content, but there is not really market for that because there is no way to pay for contribution. And NFT world will allow that, I believe.
Awesome. Elliot, what's the wildest art world outcome associated with NFTs?
I think I'm gonna touch on something that Witek mentioned briefly, but I think where this is going to re-explode is when augmented reality becomes really mainstream, and I think that's when we're going to see the shift from like a core user base to just mass adoption. And I think that's not only in art, that's in fashion and music, NFTs, and all of that stuff. Like I can totally imagine like walking down the street wearing my new Facebook AR goggles and like seeing someone wearing like a digital hat that's actually an NFT that, you know, he maybe bought it's a Balenciaga $100,000 NFT hat that, you know, is going to earn him street cred from the people who are impressed with $100,000 Balenciaga hats. Art, I think, will function in a similar way. I think you go to one of the big functions of art, or one of the big reasons people like collecting art, is because it is a status symbol. It is when people come to your house, they sit down on your couch and they see this Picasso or this Warhol above your fireplace. It says something about you. And so once we start interacting in a world where we're seeing the physical, but also seeing this augmented digital world on top of it, how do painting, sculpture fit into that? I can totally imagine walking in front of someone's kind of front yard and, you know, with my AR goggles looking at their front yard and seeing a 100-foot Cause statue, knowing that he bought it from Cause and it cost X amount of money, and almost that's how he shows it off to the world.
Actually, just wanted to mention really quick on that note that you were saying. I actually live in Vancouver, and I just heard about this art exhibit happening underneath one of our major bridges. This artist, I think her name is Jessica Angel, and she basically is NFT-izing the bridge where it's using Kusama. So you walk under the bridge, you whip out your phone, and you see these like NFTs and AR environment. It's all crazy, and you can pick up some of these NFTs while you walk around there. So that's you know, it's one other example of this in the real world. One step into that direction. I'm looking out for not even for the glasses, but the contact in your eye. That's when it'll really be for real.
Yeah.
And by the way, just on that note, I should give a shout out to probably CADAF, which is the Crypto and Digital Art Fair, which has been doing this in New York and Paris, in different locations on the world. Acute Art as well has been commissioning traditional artists to create these similar, I don't know, exhibitions, performances, whatever that Witek mentioned. There are people doing it, and I think it's very cool.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about sort of like, I guess we're in the midst of a bull market still. NFTs are still really catching on in the mainstream in a way we hadn't seen yet before. Let's talk a little bit about what happened in the past year, either from a technical side or just an awareness side, that really caused this. You mentioned the next big boom in NFTs being sort of mass adoption, but like what was it over the past year that caught people's eyes again and really brought people in? Elliot, we can start with you.
Yeah. So again, I mentioned AndArt is not really an NFT or blockchain company, but about 6 months ago, we started seeing this explosion first in the traditional crypto space of people buying more and more NFTs. Underarchingly, I think a big factor of that was the huge price increase in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and all of a sudden people had money and wanted to spend it, or had more money and wanted to spend it in creative ways. What was interesting is how that reflected in the art world. The pandemic in the art world hit hard, and a lot of museums were closed, and a lot of traditional sellers, traditional collectors weren't selling the things, the high value things that they needed to sell. So all of a sudden the art world is looking, how else can we try to monetize, or how can we diversify our customer base? And the NFT market ended up being really, really interesting for them. So starting in probably November of last year, October, November of last year, we started getting a lot of calls from two types of people. One, the kind of traditional NFT crypto platforms who said, great, we can dominate our market. We know our crypto audience, but how do we get traditional collectors on board to start buying our stuff, or traditional artists to buy our stuff? And on the other side of the equation, we started getting calls from auction houses and galleries and museums saying, look, we know our customer base, we know our collectors, but there's this whole other pool of people that have money and are buying art. How do we start getting them involved? And so the last 6 months has just been like a whirlwind of trying to connect both sides, and not only in a way that's like, okay, like this is an easy way to make money, but in a way that there's an added advantage to the way that both things are doing. Obviously, Christie Sotheby's have these huge networks, huge reach of people. So if you can use that platform to showcase something amazing. We also organized the first ever it was like the history of crypto art show at UCCA in Beijing, one of the big contemporary art museums in Beijing, where we kind of said, look, if this is going to be considered a proper art form in the canon of art history, we need to have a proper exhibition about it. And let's see where it begins. What is crypto art? What is NFTs? And we put that show together, and it was a huge success. Shout out to my partner Kin Wen for doing that. I think that's what happened in the past 6 months, and now we're starting to see that calm down a little bit. But again, I think it's just going to calm down until the next boom, where people are just going to go back at it, gung ho.
Yeah, Shabane, from the gaming perspective, what in the past year changed? How did things accelerate? What were you maybe surprised by seeing? You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute still. Witek, we'll go over to you while we figure out Shabane's tech difficulty. So yeah, we talk about maybe the general question, right? Like what in the last year helped facilitate this massive growth, but then also I want to like add on for you, like what are the things technically that are still potentially holding back either creators or collectors from really taking full advantage of what NFTs have to offer?
Sure. Well, obviously, we have this like 3-year Bitcoin cycle, right, that happens. And so that, brings a huge flood of people into the space, a lot of innovation, a lot of crazy ideas being thrown around. And, this time it was really went into NFTs like crazy. And so I think, one of the waves right now with NFTs, the first wave is really people the influencers, the experimenters, the artists, the guys who, they don't have a huge overhead. They don't have a huge cost of doing this. They can go in, they can throw ideas in there, musicians, and they can get this out to large amounts of people. And that's exactly what happened. Everyone, my grandma, everyone knows about NFTs now, right? And I think, we started early in the gaming space, and that was a really tough nut to crack. I mean, game developers, they have to spend millions and millions of dollars, years building their games, have all these resources, and then risking getting into NFTs is kind of scary for them with a new technology. So we've been really lucky to have this huge boom with the influencers and everybody doing this. And now we can start going into businesses using it to gamify, and businesses are quite open to trying new things, even though there's more resources involved. And then I think gaming is really going to take a lot of attention afterwards as well. So it's been really fortunate to see this happen. Now we have a lot of really solid businesses, solid blockchains, solid technology, and people are really trying to advance this properly. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Shabane, we have you back.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I agree with... Sorry.
I'll repeat the question real quick, just in case you were having some issues. Generally speaking, what happened in the past year that caused the NFTs to come come in so hot and hard, even considering the bull run, right? And specifically in the gaming space, like what were you think the catalysts, or what were you potentially surprised by?
So I think, as Witek mentioned, cracking the game professional was not easy, and mainstream user at the same time, people who don't know about crypto, it was not easy. But I think really the revolution comes from the consume creator, artist who started to put high quality things on chain and making money out of it, salary. I think that is a game changer, because people started to realize that you have a market. You have a market of people who are ready to buy art. And this came really from them. And then big companies started to get interested. But without, I would say, democratization of the creation and all the creativity that started around NFT, we wouldn't have been reached, in my opinion, this point where every eyeballs are now on NFT market.
And maybe I can add on to that a little bit. Also, where things are going. We've seen a lot of this built up on, very simple token standards, very simple technology. I mean, it's something a sole developer can go and make an NFT contract and make everything and do it. Now people are trying to get a little bit more detailed. We're seeing royalty systems, royalty standards come up. We're seeing people try to do more complex, activity with this stuff beyond just minting an NFT and displaying it. So I think the future that's going to hold a lot of cool use cases, like bonding curves are going to be used in minting. There's going to be all kinds of new ways of trading, new ways of sharing, fractionalizing NFTs, doing cool things with them that haven't really been explored that much yet.
Awesome, thank you. Go ahead, Shabane.
I will add that things are happening on Kusama with that remark, for example, are building around the idea of combining NFTs, and there's a lot of exciting things that are coming with this new wave and the possibility on Substrate. And really, I cannot wait to see how this will evolve. But we're definitely in a super exciting time and a group, and that's where the thing will grow.
Awesome. Yeah, we got, I think, 5 or 10 minutes before we start taking questions from the audience. So just for everyone out there, please, if you have a question, drop it in the Ask a Question bucket. It's hard to track them when they're all in the chat. So just put them in the Ask a Question and then upvote them, and we'll get to as many of it as we can in the last 10 or 15 minutes or so. I think, Shabane, that was actually a nice little transition for us to talk a bit about Polkadot and Kusama and Substrate and what excites you and Witek specifically on the tech side about this next generation protocol and what you're actually going to be able to build that is, it brings this technology into what I would argue is more of a production grade state where everyone, like Elliot said, like when AR, VR hits, like it can't happen on ETH1 because it would break it real fast. Maybe sure. Witek, we can start with you building a parachain on the panel today. Sure.
So I think there's two aspects to this: the technological, what it's built on, the technology, and then the sort of there's a sort of social and kind of aspect to blockchain. The social contracts and the rules and the way that it was designed, and that's interesting to talk about as well. So on the technical side, I mean, I think that this ecosystem is going to be huge for this space. The way that you can really go deep down, design full token economies, design native tokens on a parachain, yet all the parachains can talk to each other seamlessly. There's all sorts of different mechanisms there, like XCM and others. So it's going to be one cool thing, actually. Not to go to that social side, like I love the Polkadot and Kusama communities. Everybody in the space here seems to be really trying to help each other. We've been talking to many different projects. Everyone's just there to like elevate each other and work on standards. It's like the early days of some of the other blockchains. And so I love seeing that. There's a huge potential to collaborate on really good NFT standards and things like that. So on the technical angle, I mean, we just love that you can optimize your protocol. If you're building a chain for gaming, you can optimize all the protocol, all the palettes that you're building, all the data, all the extrinsics to actually be hyper efficient. You don't have to deal with just a generic smart contract system. You can build trusted connections in between palettes. You can build trusted connections in between parachains, so you don't have to have all this overhead of permissions if you build it right. So yeah.
Shabane, you want to build on your point where you were starting to talk about Polkadot, Kusama, and then what Substrate might be able to provide for the scalability necessary for integrating NFTs into games properly, and how you're looking at that.
So back in the time when we operated Spells of Genesis and Ethereum mainnet came, we got a lot of comments, which people saying you should jump or you should go on Ethereum. And the argument was it's cheaper and faster, which is not the case anymore now. But what we notice is there are groups of people, and people who are on Ethereum are not the same that are on Bitcoin. There is kind of a challenge. And we thought we want to build our game and the tools around in order to serve different communities. So if you own a dragon on Bitcoin, on Ethereum, on other chain, it should be your choice. But in the game should see it's the same, and the art is the same, but the token is different. And each of those community are like a country. So when you do your game on Ethereum, it's like you're localizing. The interesting thing about a Polkadot and Substrate technology is the parachain ecosystem allows a multiple governance system within one group. So basically, you could create your NFT on one chain or another parachain because you prefer this, you prefer the founder, or you prefer that the fees are low, or whatever the reason is. There is the possibility to deliver content to multiple community and sub-community. And this is very interesting because a Polkadot Substrate can provide this different sub-communities. And what we're trying to do, and that's the problem we're trying to solve, is to connect all the art, what is the creation, and the token, whatever the token is. It could be on Kusama, on Polkadot, on Unique Network, which is another parachain. It could be a lot of different places, and we try to put it all together. So we say to the user, you own that, and you own that on Kusama, this on Polkadot, this on Unique. So we need to bridge it all and serve all, and each of those subchain are governance system, beliefs, and markets in a way.
Great, yeah. Elliot, sort of right before that last point that Shabane made about being able to get your NFT wherever you are, which is obviously very important and a good reason why you should build on an interoperable protocol like Polkadot. The point before that about governance was actually really interesting, and I wanted to ask you about, coming from the more like, I want to say institutional art world with these giant players. In a lot of ways, Ethereum looks a little bit like a free-for-all because there really isn't governance. So maybe you could talk a little bit about why, having like even in a decentralized, trustless way, have the community actually be able to have say, and if the community includes like these big art institutions, why that might be important to them, right? Like I've heard people just collect on the collector side, sort of get a little bit feel like they're not, being economically represented as well as they could be in a marketplace, when an artist could maybe just mint 50 NFTs in a day after a good sale to try to cash in. Like governance could fix that and actually create an economically efficient marketplace.
Well, I think I'll throw your question back and flip it around. I wouldn't say why it could be helpful to those institutions. I think more interestingly is why it could be destructive to those institutions. The beauty of I think of a decentralized world is that there is no single person who decides what's good, what can be sold, what can't be sold. One of the big things at Christie's when I was there in 2018, I said, great, let's sell some NFTs. I also said, let's sell some sneakers, let's sell some skateboards. And there was a lot of pushback because the market wasn't ready. Or let me rephrase that, Christie's wasn't ready as an institution to say, great, we're here and we're going to be selling skateboards and we're going to be selling sneakers and we're going to be selling NFTs. My philosophy was that an auction house should be like, with an asterisk, but an auction house should be like a marketplace, and it should serve the demand of the masses, of the market. For that reason, I think rather than how you pose the question, I actually think that this technology makes it dangerous for players like that have historically been the people who have said, we're going to decide what to sell, we're going to decide how much to sell it for, we're going to set the prices, because if the market and the artists and the collectors don't agree with you, too bad. Now they have an alternative. Yeah.
Totally correct, and appreciate the flip back. We're going to dive into...
Trying to be politically correct for the art.
No worries. I didn't expect you to defend the institutions anyway, but I gave you the opportunity. We're going to jump into a couple of audience questions in the last 10 minutes here. The first one here is about whether Enjin has secured a parachain slot. So we'll skip that, considering parachains literally just went live on Kusama, and the crowd loans opened up like a day ago. So they're literally just getting funded. It's quite early. I don't know if Witek, you want to share anything about potential progress. I know it's not, you're not necessarily in the first batch of parachains ready to go, but maybe rephrasing the question, like, how have you found the build so far, and how's it going generally?
Well, I mean, we're developing on Substrate. We completed our private sale, and a lot of those people involved in that were heavily involved in the Polkadot community. They're large DOT investors, so they're there to support us getting a parachain. We also have been accumulating DOT for quite a while, so we have a number of strategies to get the chain, so I think we'll be okay.
Great. Let me scroll down here, see what else might be of interest. Plenty of when moon we won't answer. Let's see here. So maybe looking at, and maybe this might be a good one for us to just think about just from like more meta perspective, and it talks generally about why you might be interested in Polkadot, is like how you approach building an interoperable NFT marketplace, right? So Witek, this sort of going to what you were talking about, and then Shabane, your last point also about wanting to have your items in your game, no matter what you want the game to just see all the blockchains and be able to get that item wherever the players are. So like, how do you look at building an interoperable NFT marketplace or a game that is able to recognize NFTs from a lot of different places? Let's start with Shabane on the gaming side.
So that's exactly what we're building internally, is a tool that unifies the information regardless of how the token is. Is it on EVM? Is it not? So the game just queried what this user owns, and then you say, okay, he owns a dragon, a monster. So there is a work of abstracting the token itself, because every chain or solution is different. even standards are different, but when you move to another palette, it's completely different. So you need kind of a unified way to talk, to use words, to use API. That's how game communicate with the chain. You need to unify and say, okay, this equal this character. So you have to abstract that, so to have a common language, and that's the common language that we're building, which is the part of the NFT strategy on Kusama that we're part in. And we'll be happy, for example, to include Enjin parachain, and also other parachain that are around, and trying to build a common language. Then when you have a common language, you can have a platform showing what's on sale, regardless of where the token is. And also you need a way to transfer that, because if you find a super good art, you would maybe like to move the token. Maybe the parachain is discontinued. Maybe there's a lot of different reasons. So you would need to have a unified interface so you can easily move your token, not assets because they are outside, but easily move your token from a chain to another, or parachain.
Can I just echo?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Elliot.
I just want to echo exactly what Shabane is saying, but especially for the art world, because the art world, like an art collection, is the sum of all of its of all of its parts. There's no game there. It's literally only the assets, and an art collection is a combination of all the assets. So if you have, or whatever, not assets, however, Shabane was touching about assets, but it compromises all the pieces in your collection. And if you can only show off some pieces, or if it's complicated and you can't unify pieces that you bought on different chains, it's a disaster. So I know a lot of people already today, like Ethereum was probably the main standard where people were buying NFT art. Now a lot of people are buying on Tezos. So, okay, now how do I show off my collection that is part on Tezos, part on Ethereum, part on Polkadot, part whatever? There's not an easy way. So, not only show off, but also sell and trade. And so I'm echoing everything that Shabane is saying, but even more so for the art world, because there's no game. It's just the sum of its parts.
Yeah, Shabane, we'll have to have a call later and discuss, how we can link up Affinity with the Kusama side as well. So yeah, going off of what Shabane said, I think there's two things to talk about. One is the whole interoperability aspect, and the second is marketplaces and what that's going to look like in the future. So with interoperability, there's the on-chain stuff. How do we define a token? What kind of token? What the token IDs will look like? How they'll move across chains, how metadata is going to be stored, how the metadata structures are going to be on chain and off chain. Are we going to support IPFS, Magnet, HTTP, and all these different ways of storing metadata. And so we're working on that with the pair token standard. We're trying to make it so you can port tokens in, port tokens out. Different parent chains will really understand how to interact with all these tokens. And then on the other side of interoperability is like wallets, explorers, games. How do we make this easy for anyone to consume and understand and display? Because we don't want this fragmentation happening where there's a million different standards. One wallet only supports one standard, another wallet only supports another standard. It gets really complicated. So we're trying to play off of what we did in ERC 1155. Kind of evolve that, make it better, but still fairly compatible with what already exists out there. On the marketplace side, the way we see it is we want to provide some tools for people to create like bids and ask orders on chain, but we don't want to run a marketplace. We think that people, there's tons of people that are better at that. They're going to make their own marketplaces. We don't want to take fees. We want the chain to really, the fees will go to the chain. So on Affinity, the only fees going to be taken is going right back into the chain to run it, and people can build their own systems, feed in different kinds of item collections and orders, and like Shabane was saying, placing bids on items that are not even for sale or exist on other chains. Like if you want to put a bid in on something that exists on Ethereum, you can do that on Affinity, and then you start creating this liquidity that wasn't actually available before.
Great. Elliot, you got some in there in the middle. Anything you'd like to add?
Oh,
cool. So we have one last question, and Sam, it's the last question in the questions, and Sam, whoever you are out there, you got the future question right. When can I buy NFT girlfriend or boyfriend? So you think about this question and it's like a joke, but in reality, it's asking, when does blockchain NFTs, AI, VR, or augmented reality, and also like optics converge to a point where you could possibly have a AR, VR unique partner in your life? Let's do predictions on when and where it happens first.
I'm gonna say there's a cool art project by an amazing artist called Thomas Webb with 2 B's, that's called Crypto Girlfriends, which has a little play on that. So you guys should check it out.
Good tip. Witek, how about you? Or you could, when do you have your first NFT dog?
What kind of girlfriend do you want? I mean, do you just want a waifu pillow, or do you want somebody you can talk to? I guess you can talk to GPT-3, or do you want to wait for AI to start holding your currency for you and controlling your life that way? No, I'm just kidding.
It is a plausible outcome.
There's a lot of technology available today, and people could do that. But I mean, I think there's always going to be a lot more value in actual human relationships.
Shabane, you might actually have one in a game. That might be one of the earlier times you see this.
It's a good question. I see 2 angles here. There is the AI, VR, and whatever. This technology actually is separate for NFT. NFT is one thing, AR, VR, whatever it is, it's another thing. Of course, you can combine them. So this question better to be asked to those people who can create semi-humans. But there is also something else here, is you can imagine a human tokenizing himself and saying, okay, I'll be the boyfriend or the girlfriend to whoever owned the token, which is another story and another ethic question. It didn't happen, as I know, so far. But it could definitely, and it will probably, along with a lot of other ethic questions about NFT, IP protection, and everything. So these are a question that need to be asked to a etician or really the community. How we're gonna resolve this question? I cannot give an answer, but
no, you're completely on point.
If you want to start designing your virtual girlfriend, actually, it's kind of coming out of Uncanny Valley now. Epic made something called MetaHuman, and you can actually load it up. You sign up for the preview, and it's scary how realistic it is. It's
we know when we get down to asking the ethical questions, we've found the core of the conversation, and I think it's a good place to leave it. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today for Web3 Talks, diving deep on NFTs. Thank you, everyone else, for joining us today, and hope to have you back next time.
Thanks for having us.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks.